In my homily for Good Friday, I suggested taking a fresh look at the Passion, why Christ died, and how it all worked in God's plan. I'd like to continue that line of exploration, looking at what today's gospel presents to us. Now, it is really striking. Lots of things are striking, here in today's gospel. The fact that the only thing Jesus says to his disciples is, "Peace be with you." He doesn't say, "So why don't you guys run away in the garden?" or anything. He didn't say anything like that. He just, the risen Lord only has peace. Don't forget that. But what's also very striking, of course, is that he still has his wounds. The risen Lord bears his wounds. It reminds me of Good Friday, of John's Gospel, where Pilate brings Jesus out after his scourging and presents him to the crowd with the crown of thorns and everything, and says, the famous phrase in Latin, "Ecce homo," meaning, "Behold the man. Here's the man." This is what humanity, the human one, the Son of Man, all of us really, look like. But today's gospel goes a step further. Thomas sees and, touches the wounds which are still there. And he doesn't say, "Behold the man." He says, "My Lord and my God." One of the very few times in the New Testament even that Jesus is directly referred to as God. So the revelation is that God is standing before him in human form and with wounds. The face of God is wounded. So let's take a fresh look at the crucifix. Again, we're so used to seeing it. We see it everywhere. We have it everywhere. We think you know what it means, what its implications are, and we kind of forget to be shocked. We should not only be shocked that we would do this to God, which we did, but that God would be that. That's how God chooses to reveal God's self to us. My Lord and my God, with the wounds. So, are we not shocked and disoriented and amazed that we worship a naked, tortured, dying, rejected, humanly speaking, criminal man? We adore a bruised and bleeding and dying man. I mean, isn't that shocking? Can we really see it with new eyes and be shocked? And then what does it say to us? That this is the face of God. The wounds remain. The wounds, as modern spiritual writers sometimes say, become sacred wounds. All wounds become sacred. That's the face of God, and that's the face of humanity. Wherever we see wounded, naked, dying, tortured, rejected, mistreated, downtrodden human being, we see God. Or not. We should see the face of God there. And this is not me making this up. That's exactly what Jesus said would happen at the Last Judgment, did he not? Didn't he not say that? Whatever you do to the least of these, you do to me. And he mentions the hungry and the thirsty, the sick, the imprisoned, the immigrants, the strangers, the naked, just as he's naked on the cross. Whatever you do to the least of these, tortured, neglected, marginalized, you do to me. And he doesn't say, it's as if you did it to me, because it's not. He says, you're doing it to me, because it's Christ. They are the face of Christ. They are the face of God, if we're able to see it, because they're all the body of Christ. So that's how we must treat them, as we would treat God, as we would treat Christ. And this shouldn't be a surprise. Look at the way Jesus lived in his life. What did he do all the time, all according to the Gospels? He went and healed people. He relieved the sick and the suffering and those tormented by demons, as most of us are, and freed them and liberated them. That's where he saw Ecce Homo, the face of humanity, which became his own face in the incarnation and the crucifixion and the resurrection, where he still has his wounds, which become sacred wounds because that's how we contact Christ, through the wounds of humanity. We're in the second reading, that passage from the book of Revelation. Jesus says, don't be afraid. I'm the first and the last, the living one. I was dead, but now I'm alive forever and ever. I hold the keys to death and to the netherworld, because he's been there. So wherever there are people dying, or dying all sorts of deaths, not necessarily physical ones, psychological ones, economic ones, social ones, it's Christ who's dying. It's Christ whom we must recognize. All the rejected ones. Look at this famous psalm. This Psalm 118 we have today, like last week, is the great Easter psalm, the great Sunday psalm. The liturgy, Christian liturgy, several celebrates, sang this in the monastery. We sang this psalm every Sunday morning. And the middle of the verse there, which we just heard, says, the stone which the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. And that's still true. And that's always true in human history. That the very ones whom the builders, the ones who construct, a nice, neat little society and church and everything else, all those rejected people that don't make the cut, literally, to build up the temple, they become the cornerstone in God's kingdom. And Jesus said as much, did he not? The first will be last and the last will be first. The last will be first. Just as that rejected man on the cross became first in God's kingdom. That pattern continues if we have only eyes to see it and hearts to minister to it. The heart, yes. What about the image for divine mercy, which has become so popular? What do we have? We have light streaming from the wounded side, from the pierced heart of Jesus. So the light should be streaming from our pierced heart as well. And let's face it, how many times do we, or our children, or our friends, feel rejected and bloody and dying and tortured and rejected, self-worth at an all-time low, suicidal even, depressed? Hello, Christ. The sacred wounds where you meet Christ. Hopefully you get the encouragement from your neighbor and your friends to see Christ there. And you can pour out your own heart of commiseration and love to them. First of all, receiving it yourself when you need it. When you feel most wounded, you're most like Christ, right? Right? And to resurrect then with him, hopefully with the help of your brothers and sisters. And then we minister to that because it's Christ, because it's us. Their wounds are our wounds. Why? That's what Paul says. You're all one body. If one member suffers, all members suffer. So the wounds of humanity, whether in the Ukraine or wherever else it's happening, are our wounds. And a revelation of Christ. And a revelation of the face of God, if we see it. Jesus says to Thomas today at the end of the gospel, "Blessed are those who have not seen and have believed." And we say, aren't we lucky we have not seen Jesus, but we have believed? Yes, we have seen Jesus. Go out into the street. He's right there. Blessed are they who have seen Jesus in the most rejected and marginalized and bloody and dying and tortured. They have really believed because they've really seen. So let's be shocked again as we see the crucifix. Shocked enough to be startled out of our complacency and our belief that's so superficial, and start to see Christ where he really is. And start to love Christ where he really is, and minister to Christ where he really is. Every wounded person, every wounded thing in our universe is the face of Christ. They're sacred wounds that you can touch, put your hand in, and reach God. And God reaches you through that. So let's open our eyes. Not run away. Oh, no, we can't. Open our eyes and open our hearts to see Christ. Maybe for the very first time.